Just after we recorded our interview for the show, I discovered I'd made a huge error and started beating myself up relentlessly. I really worked myself into a frenzy, and I dumped some of this negative energy on you, Fatty.
Oh, I was feeling it. I could feel that energy coming off of you, Hottie. You gave yourself a serious scolding. I was honestly kind of worried for you. I mean, it's just a podcast, but you turned your stress meter up to 11 in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Luckily, I found a fix to the little recording problem I had and all was right. And in addition, I reached for a little Floyd's of Leadville to help erase some of that anxiety because, that was the kind of thing, harmless little recording error, that can cause me to toss and turn at night. And it's really not necessary.
And I will say that no one is going to notice that recording error and probably would not have noticed it at all if you weren't calling attention to it right now. But I will say that turning to a Floyd CBD chew or a capsule or a tincture to help you settle down is a really good call. We all have stressful situations and mental baggage, but as Leadville Racers, it is very important to calm down, get our rest, and Floyd's of Leadville can really help with that. I mean, work for me this summer, not this job, but my day job, has featured a lot of heavy lifting, and I've needed Floyd's to assist me in the evening so that I can get Leadville and my life preparation sleep.
We hope you are feeling your best at this point in your training, but if you are struggling with life's cumulative mental garbage, or if the pressure of race day is starting to weigh on you, try a capsule or a chew or some tincture. It really helps you hit the reset button and get back to the right frame of mind.
Yeah, everything Hottie mentioned is at floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY to get a 15% discount.
And thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2,
1. Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. This is season 4, episode 14 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty, and here's something to freak you out. We are less than 1 month away from race day. You freaked out, Hottie?
No, I've had my Floyd, so I'm just fine.
Well, I am freaked out, and I've had my Floyd, so I guess that's how we're different. Our show's always prided itself on being Leadville info for regular racers, for the people. In general, this is not a front of the race show. We focus on our content and our interviews on racers and making sure that you have a great day on the course.
But when we've had a pro on, we've been picky about it. Wiens, Reba, Jeremiah, the people's pros.
Mm-hmm.
But how, after 4 seasons, we have not had Todd Wells on this show is beyond us. Well, that all changes with this show. 3-time champ and all-around good guy Todd Wells joins the podcast.
Oh, and it is such a good conversation. We're talking with Todd about his career with a focus on the Leadville Trail 100. And in spite of him being truly one of the fastest mountain bikers of all time, he has stories and tips that anyone can use, as well as some very personal and personable information and lots of great info on fueling.
Right. You're going to hear that Todd experiences some of the same difficulties we mortals do at 12,000 feet, namely just getting calories into your body while you simultaneously try to breathe that impossibly thin air at race pace.
Yeah, that is not easy. Like a lot of us, Todd's solution has been to rely on gels while racing. And for the past year, I personally have been experimenting with GU liquid energy gels. Like regular gels, you get 100 calories per packet, but they are much thinner in consistency to the point where you can actually drink them instead of trying to squeeze them out like toothpaste out of their pouch.
And I understand you don't need to take the extra step of washing these down with water afterward, which is helpful when you just don't have a lot of time to be riding one-handed. But how's the taste for these things?
Honestly, Hadi, these are the best tasting gels I have ever had. In particular, out of the, there's only a few flavors available so far, but I love the orange and the lemonade flavors. They're just really good. They'd be good on a slush, like on a Hawaiian ice, I think.
Ooh. Well, so you've been using these for a year. How come you haven't mentioned them till now?
Well, training with something and racing with something are two very different things. And I did not want to come on the show and talk enthusiastically about a product until I know more than that I like training with it. I needed to know that I can race well with it. And I have now. I used these along with regular Goo Roctane gels for the entirety of last week's Breck Firecracker 50. And I felt great the entire day, including, I am happy to say, after the race. And that is not often true.
All right, then. Will they be part of your feed strategy for Leadville?
They definitely will be. They are delicious, for one thing. And there is that important part about cutting out a step in the gel, then wash it down, drink dance. And finally, very important for anyone who's ever had a bad gut during the race at Leadville 100. So far, I have found these to be incredibly easy on my stomach.
And they are, of course, available at the feed, and you still have time to try them out before race day to see if you might want to integrate them into your high-altitude feeding routine. Just head on over to thefeed.com/Leadville and sign up for your 15% discount and try out Goo's new drinkable gel. On the way up Columbine, easy is important, and these are easy to get down.
They really are. And for that climb and for the climb up power line, on the return inbound, I'm going to be going with the Goo Liquid Energy all the way. You can try and see if they work for you as well by going to thefeed.com/Leadville. Get your 15% discount. Let me know what you think.
We are incredibly honored to have one of the icons of the LT100 race on this show. Todd Wells is our featured guest. It was after our interview with Leadville Moto Earl Walker that we were finally brought to our senses about Todd. Earl not only talked up Todd Wells as a racer, but as an all-around great guy, and he is.
He truly is. He is humble as a winner, gracious when he loses. Todd Wells is very short on bravado, while tall as a person, and his list of victories is even taller, and his Leadville knowledge is incredibly deep. Most of all, though, I would say he is a true people's champion.
Bring him on in, Leadville, your 2016 champion! Make him feel at home, Mr. Todd Wells!
Well, it is so good to have Todd Wells here on the show, on the Leadville Trail 100 Mountain Bike Show podcast. How could we have a Leadville podcast without having Todd Wells on the show all this time? I don't know. There's no excuse for this, but we're going to make amends right now, folks. So that's why we've invited Todd onto the show. Todd Wells has been retired since October of 2017. Well, retired in quotation marks. I mean, you've been retired, Todd, in a pro sense, but you're still out there riding, right? I mean, you still like to line it up for fun and give it a go once in a while?
Definitely. I've been racing bikes since I was about 5 years old. And when I retired professionally, still love riding bikes, still like racing bikes. And living in Durango, Colorado, there are a lot of bike races around and a lot of fast guys to ride with. So didn't want to give it all up completely.
And what else has been occupying the Todd Wells life since we last saw you cross the finish line at the Leadville Trail 100?
Well, since then, I've become a mortgage broker. And as most people probably know, real estate and financing and everything, it was crazy before COVID, and COVID kind of threw gas on that fire, and it's just been insane since then. So been working a lot and trying to spend as much time with my family as I can. I have a wife, Megan, and a son, Cooper. Awesome.
Well, this is great, Fatty. We're going to learn how to race the Leadville Trail 100 and learn how to refinance our houses in the same show. I think that's cool. Well, let's get on to the cycling side of things. Todd, we'll leave the mortgage banking, the refinancing for maybe another show at this point. But Todd, you've had a terrific career, not only in Leadville, but obviously before then too. And you seem to love to do things in threes. You won 3 Leadvilles, 3 Pan American Championships, 3 National Cyclocross Championships, 3 Olympic Game appearances. You were 10th at London, by the way. You have a dozen mountain bike national championships. During much of that time, you raced at World Cup in Europe, too, when you were compiling all those wins. So, career highlight. Was your career highlight from one of those 24 championships I just mentioned, or is it somewhere else?
It's hard to put a highlight on a career. I think the highlight of my career was that it lasted so long. Of course, for cross-country mountain bike racing, the Olympics is the pinnacle. World Cup racing is the pinnacle. And I chased those dreams for quite a while. Had some success there, never got a medal, landed on a couple World Cup podiums, which were all amazing. And then after that, I kind of transitioned into these longer races like the Leadville 100, the La Rutas, the Grand Raid over there in Europe. So I don't know. I think the highlight is being able to do it for so long.
If you could go back and, pick a race to do again as a pro in top form, where would it be? In a way, I'm asking, what's your favorite?
Yeah, well, I felt like I always got as much out of myself as I could in just about every race. It would probably be, it was the 2012 Wyndham World Cup. I ended up 4th there, I think, in the cross country. And I had just a horrible start. I was probably 25th or 30th at the start. And there was a big bottleneck after the kind of the start climb, little feed zone, probably like 4 minutes into the race. And so I lost a bunch of time there. And I started the last lap of that race. We were all together, the top 5 or 6 guys. So to be in position at the end of a World Cup to go for the victory, I would have liked to have tried that one over with a better start. And sometimes you have a bad start, you don't think about everything as much, and there's less pressure. And I've had better races with poor starts than if I have the perfect start and I overextend myself in the beginning and fade at the end. But that one is one I wouldn't mind trying with a better start. And then the 2012 Olympics as well in Athens, I had a great race there. That was my best Olympics. I was 10th. I got everything out of myself. But maybe midway through the race, I think I had made it up to 6th place. And of course, it was the first year we have this kind of new style cross-country course with the short 12 to 14-minute laps, lots of man-made features. And to be able to see the leaders, the gold medal on this switchback climb, even if they're 45 seconds up the road, but to still be in there and see the medals at that point was so cool. And I kind of blew up a little bit in that one, and I wouldn't mind giving that one another go. But otherwise, both, those were some of my best results in my mind, those couple of races. So I just, if I had to do them again, I think that, maybe I would be able to do a little bit better result. But if not, those are still some of my highlights. It
really is hard to underestimate the start of a World Cup race or the start of a cyclocross race. It seems like 70% of the race comes down to that. It's almost like an F1 race. I mean, those guys too, they come out of the gate just so fast, and you are just going for position right away in those races. Much different, of course, than our little thing we call the Leadville Trail 100, where the start is important. You don't want to crash going down 6th Street. But you've got a little time to make up for, an otherwise bad start at Leadville, which gets us to the main theme of this podcast, the Leadville Trail 100, Todd, and we're glad you're on the show to talk about this race. So at what point in your career does the Leadville Trail 100 start to bubble up? Like, how does this thing end up on your calendar, which is clearly very busy already?
Yeah, well, the first year I did Leadville, I think it was right around that 2010 timeframe. I was riding for Specialized at the time, and one of the regional sales guys had asked me to go do that race. And it was starting to get some media attention. I think Lance had maybe done it a few years before. Anyway, it was starting to get on people's radar. And I always, any excuse I have to spend time in Colorado during the summer or at back then when I was racing and traveling all over the world, I was up for it. So they basically said, hey, we want you to do this Leadville 100. I said, sure. And that year I had actually had a World Cup. I forget where we were, but it was only a week or 10 days before the Leadville 100. So I went from racing this hour-and-a-half World Cup, where you feel like you're just going to throw up the whole time because you're going so hard, to at sea level, fly home, drive up to Leadville, and then to transition to a 104-mile mountain bike race at 10,000 feet for the low point. It was something, but it was really cool. Leadville is an awesome town. The folks that put Leadville on are great. The whole pros with the amateurs and everyone rides the same course, kind of got that Ironman thing going as far as that goes. It was really cool. And I fell in love with the event. I suffered so bad in that event. If all the years after I was hyper prepared, that year I was super underprepared, and it was just rough all day long. I think that year I crashed at the top of
Sugarloaf.
Of the second, Sugarloaf, second climb. Levi was there that year, and he thought the course took a right, but it went straight, and I had my forearms resting on my handlebars. Banned UCI road position nowadays. But anyway, he turned. I couldn't grab my brakes in time. Some of the group crashed. I crashed, blew up my front wheel. Ned, who I was teammates with then, he actually gave me his front wheel. I threw that on there, jumped back in the race, and was able to get back on the group. Everyone kind of sat up there going over to the pipeline feed zone. And when I got about a third of the way up Columbine and just detonated, and Levi and JHK rode away from me, I rode for the rest of the race by myself. And it's such a different effort than a short cross-country race. On one hand, you can't maintain that intensity for that amount of time as you would a World Cup, but you just do this slightly lower effort all day long. And so by the time I got to the finish, I was just cooked.
The crash that happened at the top of Sugarloaf was captured by the film crew that was doing the second Race Across the Sky movie, so it's all documented right there.
I kept seeing the pink and black string for marking the course, and I thought there was a right. And so I braked really hard.
By the time I could get my hands up to the brakes and grab them, I hit them and went down. I ripped the spokes out of the wheel and flattened it. Ned was in the group, so he gave me his wheel. We're both on the same team, and he was more out just to kind of do it for fun. And he knew that I was trying to have a good result, so he was gracious enough.
Had that not happened, the crash, how does your day go? Is it better? Do you win? How do things play out?
I definitely don't win, but the day goes much better. Anyone who's crashed on a bike knows that crashing is no fun. And starting out an hour into this, 6+ hour day, the last thing you want to do is hit the deck, cut yourself up. But no, it would have been the same. It would have been just a little bit more pleasant of a ride.
Is that the only time you have crashed in the Leadville 100?
I think so. The Leadville, again, it's such a different, a marathon or an ultra marathon race like a Leadville or a La Ruta is so different from a cross country or a cyclocross race, where a cross country or cyclocross race, you're on your limit the whole time. You take a bad line and lose a few seconds, it's hard to get those back. Where the Leadville, you don't have to be on that limit so much. And the course, it is made so everybody can ride it. So it's not some crazy drop that you're going to see on Red Bull TV in the mud at the top of some climb in, Austria or somewhere. The terrain itself is pretty rideable for all levels. There are some ruts going down. Powerline is a little sketchy, and the top of Columbine is pretty rocky. So you get going fast, but again, you don't really win the Leadville 100 on the downhills. You can lose it and crash there, but as long as you're within, a few seconds, 10 seconds of the person you're with, usually you can make that up on the transitional flat sections between each climb and descent.
That actually gets me to a piece of advice I wanted to ask you. You've, of course, done this race many times. You're close to getting your 1,000-mile buckle, which is another conversation. But you were just saying that you can ride it at a level beneath that red line. If you were talking to someone who is racing this for the first time, or perhaps has had a rougher time doing this race, and you're telling them how to gauge their effort in the Leadville 100, what do you say? What do you tell people so that they can have a successful day out on the course?
Yeah, well, there's so many components that go into a first timer, or someone trying to get that 9-hour mark, or someone just trying to finish in 12 hours. Kind of each level you're at, there are different things you can do to gauge or improve your chances of hitting those targets. And so, the more time you can spend on the bike before the race is always going to be beneficial. Whether you're a pro rider, whether you're an amateur going for trying to get your best time, trying to break the 9 hours, the 12 hours, Leadville is all about time on the bike, in my opinion. And so even when I was racing at the World Cup level, I would still need to bump up my volume a bunch to try to prepare for Leadville. And that's someone who gets paid to ride their bike all day and do nothing else. So someone that's got a job working 40 hours a week, has a family, obviously they don't have as much time to do that. So like most people in that position, maybe you can't do the volume just because it's not there. So you jam in a bunch of intensity, which is also good and works well. But if you can find 1 day a week or 2 days a week on a weekend or some time to get some long ride in each week, or long for you, and bump up and try to build up to that time you're shooting for at Leadville, that's going to help you have the best race there. Whether that's feasible for someone who wants to, break the 12-hour mark to go out and ride 10 hours on a Saturday, maybe that's not going to happen. But the closer you can get to that, I think is the best way to prepare and set yourself up for success.
Yeah, so in 2011, you come back and win the thing, Leadville Trail 100. What was the difference between 2010 third, 2011 first for Todd Wells, as far as training, getting ready, and then race day itself?
Oh my gosh, everything. The whole lead-in, 2010 versus 2011, completely different. 2010, I had never done the course before, had never done a long race like that before. My longest race was, maybe it was a road race, the Saturn Cycling Classic or something, where we were on the bike for 6 or 7 hours. But I had never come close to a mountain bike race that long. So that year, not only did I not have to travel to Europe and race World Cups before it, but I had pretty much free reign to do whatever training I wanted for the month before. So I live in Durango, Colorado. It's 6,500 feet here. Leadville is 10,400 feet. And you think, if you live in Durango, you're probably pretty acclimated for Leadville. But the higher you go up in altitude, the bigger those small jumps make. So from sea level to 6,500 feet, it might be the same jump from 6,500 feet up to 10,000 feet. So what I did is I went and I trained at altitude. Here in Durango, there's a town not too far away called Silverton, which is at about 9,000 feet. And I spent some time in a friend's place up there in Silverton, went up to Leadville about a week before, maybe 10 days before, was able to get acclimated, ride the whole course, know each section. Also, since I had a month to train for the race, we had our cross-country national champs about 4 weeks before Leadville. It seemed like it always fell about that time, 3 or 4 weeks. So it was perfect because I would try to peak for cross-country national champs. Then I'd take a little break, a 5 or 7 day break, and of that, maybe 3 or 4 days off the bike and just real easy after. And I'd put in this 2-week block of volume where I'd be doing lots of 5, 6, some 7-hour rides up high, because where we live, you can simulate Leadville pretty easily. So I had a whole different training plan. And then I also focused on getting as light and skinny as possible. The higher you go up, the less power you produce because there's less oxygen. And so weight becomes a bigger factor. And I'm about 6'2". And when I was racing cross country World Cup, I'd be right about 170 pounds. So not super light, but for me to be at that 170 pound mark, it took some effort. I wasn't just kind of doing whatever I wanted. And then so Leadville, I was able that year to even drop, 5 or 6 more pounds off of that. So I had perfect training, great acclimatization, and I was skinny and I knew the course. So everything was completely different from jumping off a plane from Europe and just heading up to Leadville the previous year.
So if you were going to say, this episode is coming out probably about a month before the actual race, and it's very much like for other cyclists who are going to be there, they've got a month to train, kind of like you gave yourself a full month to train. In addition to the volume, in addition to getting yourself as light as possible for the race, what else would you recommend people do? What did you do as far as nutrition goes, for example?
In order to get as light as possible, I cut back on my intake. I didn't change my fueling really for pre-ride, during the ride, and after the ride. That was kind of always set right around that training, and I didn't mess with that too much. But I just tried to cut back a little at the other times. And it wasn't a pleasant experience, but it worked. And whenever you get good results, it's easier to kind of make yourself do those things. Leadville too, the first year I went there, I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was going to be like a road race. So I have some like Nutella sandwiches in my musette bags and some other snacks. I had no idea what the protocol was going to be. Well, we went through the first feed zone. I got this Nutella sandwich, and I chewed on that Nutella sandwich for about 6 minutes, the one bite, before I ended up just spitting it out. Because at Leadville, it's high and it's super dry up there. So to eat solid foods for me, that didn't work. So in the race, I switched my nutrition as well in the race, where I was eating more gels and blocks. Blocks were the most, the most real type of food I ate in the whole race the second year. But nutrition leading into the race didn't change much. Again, when it's your job to ride your bike, you're already doing all those things to the best of your ability.
Yeah, it really was during the race nutrition that I'm most interested in. And it sounds like your experience is very much like a normal person's experience, which is if you try to eat something that you've got to chew at 11,500 feet, you just can't get it down. And so it's interesting. You're going with gels and chews. About how many calories per hour, or do you really even think that way? Do you eat at need or whenever there's availability, or do you go on a real tight schedule?
So the way I fueled it and what worked for me, and everybody's different, of course, but I would try to drink at least 1 bottle an hour of a hydration type of mix, like an Osmo. So you're getting, your electrolytes and everything in there, but you're not taking many calories with that drink. And in the morning, I would try to, on the first pavement descent, I'd try to choke down a little bit of a Cliff Bar because you're coasting there for about 5 minutes, able to get a little bit of solid food. But otherwise, I was mixing it up between 4 or 5 blocks every 30 minutes or a gel. So in the beginning, or when it wasn't as stressful, I would try to eat the blocks. And then in the other times, I would eat the gels. And I would mix up between caffeinated gels and uncaffeinated gels. So every 30 minutes, I was eating something, and I was trying to drink at least a bottle per hour, sometimes more. The Leadville, too, you start out, it's 30 degrees, you're freezing, racing down that downhill, going 30 miles an hour in the dark. And by 10 o'clock, the sun is out just beating on you. And even though maybe the air temperature isn't that hot as you're climbing up Columbine or power line. When you're going 4 miles an hour as hard as you can, and the sun, there's no clouds, it's hot out there. So the day has such a range to it. But I would try to keep that consistent, every 30 minutes eating and drinking as much as I could on the bike.
So 2010, you were 6 hours, 30 minutes. Not bad for a guy who's never seen the course and, doesn't even know what he's doing there and used to racing 90-minute races. 2011, you win with 6:23. 2012, you're off to the Olympic Games in London, and you got 10th there, by the way, so great. But unfortunately, you could not defend at Leadville. You come back in 2013, take third with 6:18. Albin Licata wins that year. The next year, you win with a 6:16. A trend is starting to happen here, and I want to get your perspective on it. Times are really starting to drop at the Leadville Trail 100, like quickly. Like things are going really fast at the front of the race. What do you sense up front? What's it like up front for you as once post 2012 Olympics? How has the race changed?
Yeah, well, so like most races in that pro field, the riders make the race. So in those earlier days, we rode individually a lot. The race would split up and you'd be riding by yourself. As the years went on and Albin Licata was a big part of this, he always wanted to break the record. And so then he brings his teammate, Christian Heineck, with him. And then my teammate, Christoph Sauser, comes. And now you have these guys who are amazing, these marathon world champions. And you don't just have one of those guys, you have 2 or 3 or 4. And they all want to go as fast as possible. So just having the group there makes the times so much faster. The year that Albin set the record, I ended up getting a flat tire right before the first pavement descent and had to chase all day. But that year, you can look at the times for the top 4 or 5, and they're all at 6 hours or right under. And that group, it's just because they're great riders and it was fast that year, but they're all working together and it makes such a huge difference. I mean, you look at how fast the Tour de France does a stage versus how fast Lachlan Morton's riding it by himself right now. And it's similar. Leadville has a ton of drafting. And so having that horsepower in the group makes a big difference on the times.
When you came back after your Olympic year, were you shocked by how fast it was going? Did you expect it going in to 2013? Yeah, this is going to be much faster than I remember.
It's funny because for me, I never focused on the time. I just wanted to win the race. If it took me 8 hours, but I won, I was happy. And if I did it in 6 hours, but got 4th, to me, that was a loss. So, but Albin and these guys had the record so focused on their mind, and Albin had Jeremiah Bishop working for him one year. He had Heineck. He had, a few other people. So when you go ride that course by yourself in one day and you think, God, how could you ride this in 6 hours? Yes, it seems crazy. And then it's gotten so much faster. But when you put that many fast people in there, all with the motivation to break the record, I wasn't surprised by how fast it was.
We're going to get back to the record year, Fatty, by the way, but we should round out Todd's career here with a couple of things. First of all, there was another win for Todd in 2016 with a 6:19. And he actually bested that time in 2017, but lost to Howard Grotch, who went on to roll 3 in a row. But Fatty, we want to know about your 2018, right?
I really want to know about 2018. You went from a 6:18 to a 9:19, 3 hours and a minute slower. There's got to be a story there. Let's hear it.
Sure. So in 2018, I decided to ride it as a domestique for a couple of friends of mine. I was all set to ride for Andy Brine. He's the owner of CZ Racing, team out of Arizona. And I had just retired. And we had been talking, and he said, he's like, oh man, I'd love to have you ride for me at the Leadville 100. And so we worked things out. And my whole goal that year was to pace him and try to get him under 9 hours. And he's a strong rider. I was going to tow him along the flats so we could ride whatever steady pace was good for him. I'd grab his food in the feed zones, get whatever he wanted, carry his bottles, just all these little things that over 9 hours can make a big difference. And so anyway, we were all set to go, and he ended up busting his collarbone about 10 days before the race. And so I thought, all right, I won't be riding for Andy this year. He ends up getting his collarbone plated, and 10 days, it might be 2 weeks, but I could swear it was 10 days or less. We're on the start line at Leadville. And so his wife, Shauna, is also racing. And so originally he thought, well, maybe I'll just ride with Shauna. And then, no, he's feeling pretty good. So anyway, we set off and things are going well. I mean, it's amazing to even anyone that's broken their collarbone knows how much it hurts. And to think about riding 104 miles on your mountain bike less than 2 weeks after it happened seemed crazy. But anyway, he's doing awesome. And then we get partway up Columbine, and he's starting to kind of suffer quite a bit. And like most people, like we talked about a little bit earlier, those couple weeks right before the race, that's when you're putting in your big volume, and to lose half of that volume training, and on top of that, to be riding around with a broken bone, it obviously takes it out of you. So he was doing great. He started to come unglued a little going up Columbine. And so his wife caught us, and I ended up riding with her for the rest of the race. And just kind of shepherding her around, getting some food, trying to get her to the finish. And she had a great ride. We almost got there. But that's kind of the story of my 2018 race. And I can tell you, from a racer, everyone at the end of the race is super tired, regardless if it takes you 6 hours or it takes you 12 hours. But to ride it in 9 hours, I could not believe how tired I was. Just those extra hours on the bike compared to what I was used to. So huge respect to everyone out there that's doing it. I mean, that's one of the things that's so cool about the race. I mean, everyone is out there with their personal goals, and no one finishes that race feeling fresh.
You were riding with my people. And honestly, I'm curious if you passed me, or if I saw you and it never occurred to me to take a closer look and go, holy cow, it's one of the Leadville icons right here by me. But you definitely rode in a different pack that year. The folks who are chasing a sub-9 finish and just not quite getting there. I'm curious if you had a chance to talk to people, encourage people, if what it was like to be in one of the very intense aspirational groups in the Leadville 100.
Oh, definitely. I was cheering everyone on out there, and what really struck me is just the conga line going up Columbine. You see it coming down if you're at the front of the race, the just kind of line of people. But I don't know, you're going so fast, you're so focused, and it just kind of like a peripheral thing. But when you're riding up the climb, and you just see this line and line and line of people, it is insane. And then on the downhill, we were also, going at a different speed than I normally would go. So I was able to take everything in, and it is just incredible. Everybody out there, it's really cool.
We'll get back to Todd in just a second, but Hadi, I really want to bring up something useful and free, a terrific tool that our friends at envy.com have created. It is a tubeless tire pressure recommendations table, something every Leadville racer ought to take a look at.
Yeah, we brought up this chart before in the show, but it's worth looking at again. Whether you're lucky enough to be racing Leadville on a set of Envy wheels or any other brand.
Yeah, before your next long ride, before you come on out to Leadville, head over to envy.com, and over on their front page, you're going to see a what's your pressure link, what's your tire pressure link. Click on that and scroll down to the mountain table, and there you're going to see front and rear tire recommendations for a huge variety of applications, tire widths, and rider weights. It The XC one is the one you're going to be looking for.
It's a simple chart, but very comprehensive. Most of our listeners will want to go straight to the XC part of that chart, that application, using 2.1 or 2.25 tire widths.
Yeah, or a combination of the two on a lot of bikes. Hadi, I've been to a number of Leadville 100 shakedown rides with groups, and it is incredibly common to see folks riding with excessively hard tires. And that is not going to serve you well in Leadville.
Absolutely right, Fatty. And this chart will get listeners to the right general pressure, letting you tweak by adding or removing a pound of pressure on rides between now and race day.
Yeah, and while you're there, why don't you go ahead and check out the best wheels, bars, posts, and stem in the industry at enve.com.
So I have been watching a lot of Tour de France coverage, and one thing is for sure, there are a fair amount of ugly kits in the bunch this year. Like, there are a few teams, Fatty, I would like to send straight to the DNA custom apparel store and have them try it again.
Oh, they should. You and I have talked before about the DNA designs are actually award-winning, both by general acclaim and by pro designers. All those sponsors on kits, I understand. It's a tricky business. And you will notice something about riders in the Tour. Everyone is wearing an Aero-style jersey, and that is generally not much of a fashion statement. If you were riding for time, wearing a tailored top is a must.
Which is why, again, we're going to suggest that you get a DNA Cycling race cut jersey. Now, Leadville, kind of like the Tour, is about time. And even though our speeds on average are slower than a Tour de France stage, aero still matters. And you and your jersey are the biggest wind blocks going.
Yeah, it's true. It's too late for you to get your own custom kit, but you can still get a jersey that is going to be comfortable and fits well. It will not chafe. You just aren't going to get all the fanciness. That is okay. Hadi and I wear these jerseys, and we can tell you that the DNA jersey fits snug like it should, but it has a good stretch to it, and you're not going to feel like you're trapped in saran wrap. Aero can be comfortable. And so we say yes to being aero in a DNA Cycling jersey.
So while the custom window might be closed, you can still look and go fast in a DNA Cycling kit. You can find them at dnacycling.com. All right, back to Todd Wells and back to that record-setting year. Todd was not the winner that day, but he may have been the fastest. You came back in 2019, Todd, 6:28, good for 8th place. And then that was the Leadville career. You put a bow on it there at 6th and Harrison after 2019. So I want to circle back, though, to 2015 in that record year, because there's kind of a story within a story there, and you're definitely involved in it. That's the record year. Albin Licata has the record. It's 5:58.35 for anybody who cares, or anybody who thinks they want to go out and break that thing. But the lead moto that day, Todd, Earl Walker, I don't know if you know Earl, we interviewed him this year, and Earl says that had Todd Wells not flatted that day, Todd Wells would be the record holder. And he bases that on the fact that after you got going, after your flat you talked about, you chased like a madman and were not losing time until late in the race, that you held steady with Albin and with his teammate right up until near the end of the race. He says that record would have been yours had you not flatted that day. What do you think? Do you think you could have stuck with Albin and Christian that day and possibly beaten them to the line?
That's nice of him to say that I would have won that year, but hard to say. That year was really hard for me. I just could not put it together. If I had good form, I got a flat. If I didn't get a flat and my bike worked great, I had no form. And so I had trained super hard for Leadville. Would need to have a good result there to get a new contract. And, 30 minutes into the race, flat tire in the lead group. And it was horrible. Chased like crazy. And I thought I was doing okay going out there, but I had, by yourself against 5 or 6 motivated guys that are world champion level, I just had no chance. So I would have loved the opportunity to be up there in that group. And it would have been really cool to have that time for my low time for Leadville, but just wasn't meant to be.
What do you think is possible at the Leadville Trail 100 as far as time? Not for just Todd Wells, but for anybody. Do you think a pro can take down at 5:58? And if so, what's the lowest you could see happening there?
Whew, I didn't think that it would go under 6 hours, but I don't know, 5.5. I mean, if that was the Marathon World Championships and you had all the best marathon riders in the world go to that race and do it, because they're used to being flat out for 4 hours. This is only, if they do it in 5.5, that's only an hour and a half longer than what they normally ride. I could see it falling by that much, but it just depends. Depends who's there.
Hadi, I would pay to see that race to just bring all of the fastest guys in the world, and maybe it's a different day so that they have a clear field and say, let's see exactly what is possible. That said, man, you got close. That is, I mean, such a set of amazing stories, Todd.
Yeah, and everyone has those same stories for them, whatever it is. They were so close to getting that 9 hour. Then a lot of people at the Leadville 100 seem to have stomach problems. So it's hot, it's high altitude, it's super dry, and it's a much longer event than most people do. So that is the number one thing I hear for people is they have stomach issues, nutrition issues, but everyone's got their stories and their battles going on out there.
So hypothetical question, Todd. Imagine someone parachutes you into Leadville right now. What kind of time would you get?
Oof. Well, I have gotten back from a 2-week boat trip through the BVI where I didn't ride my bike for 2 weeks. So right now I would probably be 7.5 hours. But this year I had some pretty good training. We have a local race here. It's the Iron Horse Bicycle Classic. Next year it'll be its 50th anniversary. And so that is at the end of May. And leading into that race, I actually had some pretty good training going this year for what I've been able to fit in lately.
Awesome. 7.5 would be a respectable, probably wouldn't win you the race, but a respectable time. No doubt. There at the Leadville 100. Do you think about going back at all? I mean, does Leadville, when the date kind of comes up, do you think about, maybe I go up there and see what I can do?
Sure. Well, no one got to do it last year with COVID. So I had hoped to maybe do it this year. But then, like I said, I had this vacation that was supposed to happen over COVID. It didn't, or 2020 happened this year. And just where I'm at right now with work and everything, if all I had to do was train between now and then, I'd love to go back this year and think I could I wouldn't win, but I'd be able to stay in that lead group at least till the base of Columbine and maybe get back to the chase group by the bottom. But, when things slow down, I hope to get back there and at least be able to participate with those guys for a portion of the race.
I think Hadi and I can speak for thousands of Leadville racers in saying we are excited to see you back on that course. I mean, there are a few, let's call them Leadville royalty, David Wiens, Rebecca Rusch, and Todd Wells. And I think anytime you can toe the line to, come to the starting line, whether you're there to put in a lead group performance or just to shepherd someone around the course, hey, take me, please. But, oh man, it would be so great to see you there again.
Yeah, thanks. I look forward to getting back there. Like I said, this year, it's probably not going to work out, but hopefully next year or in the next couple of years.
Well, since you can't help us out on race day, Todd, we're going to put you to work here and get Todd's takes on the LT 100. There's a little pieces of advice from Todd for anyone planning to do the race. So these are some just quick little lightning round questions here, Todd. We'll start with a couple of easy ones. What's your favorite spot on the Leadville Trail 100 course? So
my favorite spot has got to be the finish line. I think that's everybody's favorite. I can tell you my two least favorite spots. The Columbine's hard, but that's not it. As you're coming back, there's this little down and up you go to before you get back to the pipeline feed zone. And it's super steep and everyone will know it. And that part that kind of tells me how Powerline is going to go. That is always bad. And Powerline is by far my least favorite part of that course.
Yeah, Collarbone Hill, I think is what a lot of people call that. And it is such a brute. And, because it's only a couple of minutes, you tend to forget it. But that is right when the day is getting super hot and just hitting that and, either trying to ride it or march up it. Yeah, not fun at all. So, we know your favorite, your least favorite spots. What is the piece of advice you would give to the average rider? Because you see everyone as you are leading the race. You must pick out some things that you think, if he would only do this or she would only do that, they would have a better day on the race.
That is a great question. And it's so hard because everyone has their own things that could make them better. But if you can get with a good group, and there's so much time you can make up on those flat drafting sections. And maybe you ride the climbs at your own pace, the descents with what you're comfortable with. But those flats, if you can get in a group and you're putting out the same effort you would if you would be riding by yourself, but you're on someone's wheel, you're going a couple miles an hour faster. And being comfortable in the group and getting with a group that fits for you, I think would be a big benefit to most people.
Todd, you are saying what other Leadville legends have said on this show. We've had several of them on this year, and they've said the same thing about especially that pipeline section between Twin Lakes and the bottom power line. Get with groups, save energy in there. It's a little harder to do on the return, but especially outbound, you want to get with a group, save some energy, get ready for the big Columbine climb. Okay, Todd, here's another lightning question for you, and this is one we've gone over and over with on this show. Hardtail or full suspension?
Well, I always would choose the bike that the prior year's winner used. So if they rode a hardtail, then I thought I had to ride a hardtail. Especially if I was the one that won, I would always stick with the bike I won on. But nowadays, I think the full suspension bike is the way to go. You give such little weight. There's such a little weight penalty. And the longer you're planning to be out there, the bigger the benefit that full suspension bike is, in my opinion. So, if you're shooting to make 12 hours, that full suspension bike is going to be even more beneficial to you than someone who's going to do it in 6.
So here's something I hear from a lot of folks and they're mostly folks who may have done Leadville or think they have an opinion about Leadville. They say, well, Leadville's not a mountain bike race. It doesn't have a lot of single track. So let's ask a World Cup guy. Is Leadville a mountain bike race?
I think it's definitely a mountain bike race. That's one of the great things about mountain bikes. Mountain bikes are versatile. And mountain bike racing, you have tons of different courses. So no, it's not a Red Bull TV World Cup race course by any means. But you're not going to ride your road bike out there. So the best tool for that race is a mountain bike. And I definitely think it's a mountain bike race.
All right, let's take it one step further. Have you ever thought of racing it on a single speed?
Oh, no, not intentionally. The only single speed I ever raced was a BMX bike.
Yeah, he has to ask that question, Todd. Every guest we get on the show, hey, have you thought about doing it on a single speed? I get asked that question all the time, and he knows my answer. I like gears, right?
Someone's going to bite eventually.
So we got to race single speeds. I know the BMX story is a fun one, Todd. You raced BMX in school up until high school, I think, and then started racing BMX and I guess got beat pretty good. You turned to bodybuilding after that, which is an interesting move, Todd. How did the bodybuilding thing go?
I don't know. Growing up in New York, that's kind of a thing, bodybuilding, I guess, or it was when I was growing up. Yeah, I raced BMX my whole childhood. And then in high school, when kids get cars, I didn't have much success with BMX and got a car, started lifting weights. But at that same time, mountain biking was kind of bubbling up, and that was in the early 90s. So lucky for me, I ended up finding the mountain bike. There was one other person that rode mountain bikes in my high school, and we became great friends. And as soon as I started mountain biking, I had more success than I did racing BMX my whole childhood. So very fortunate to stumble upon that.
And then you come out west to Durango, and you land in Durango. Suddenly you're riding alongside Ned Overend and some of the greats of mountain biking. Must have been a bit of a shock. I mean, what's going on in Durango? First of all, I was looking over at a Durango list of famous cyclists. First of all, we have Sepp Kuss, who is currently riding in the Tour de France, the Durango Kid, they call him. But the roll call out of Durango is just amazing. Howard Grotz, 3-time Leadville champ, Alicia Pastor, Chris Wary, Tom Danielson, Todd Wells, Travis Brown, Ned Overend, John Tomac, Bob Roll. The names just keep rolling off this Durango. What is going on there, Tom? What's in the water? What's happening?
Well, it's funny because when I always thought I would move to Florida because it was warm there. I could ride my bike all the time. But my buddy who got me into mountain biking, he's like, no, we got to go to this town, Durango. And this is pre-internet. So you look at a magazine and he's like, see all these guys, John Tomac, Julie Furtado, Missy Giovi, Ned, everyone lived here. And so we loaded up his car, and I hadn't been west of Ohio at that point, drove out here, and the town, it's still a smaller town, but it was really small then. And so, you go from, as a kid, growing up in an area where there weren't many, you just didn't see people that you would look up to in magazines walking around in your grocery store. Then you come to this little town, and it's just incredible. And the first week we're out here, we're riding with these guys and seeing them all over. I couldn't think of a cooler experience, or at least one that I've had. It was just amazing. And those guys all moved here after the 1990 World Championships. The first mountain bike World Championships were here, brought all those people in. And then more people migrated here because they were here. They had kids. The people that migrated here had kids. And so it's just this incredible community that is really small, and it just breeds these amazing athletes.
Of course, the community there has been deeply affected by the loss of someone, and that's Ben Sontag. Ben was hit and killed by a motorist while out riding his bike. And for you, Todd, you've lost a couple of people very close to you in your life, both under similar circumstances. Burry Stander, who was very close to you, kind of a mentor, I guess, in your World Cup days. Tell me about these two people, what they meant to you over your career and over your life.
Well, for me, Burry, he came on the team when I was racing for GT, and he was this 17 or 18-year-old kid, or actually it was Mongoose I think I was racing for then, and he was also on Mongoose, and he came to the U.S. From South Africa. Great guy. We teammates, became friends, and then his career just went on this crazy upward trajectory. U23 world champ, was one of the first guys to beat Julian Absalon when he was really at the top of his game at the World Cup. And so I felt like Burry really, he gave me confidence and he inspired me, and being his teammate made me a much better rider and really kind of got my World Cup career going. I'd raced World Cups for a long time before we were teammates, and I'd always have great teams, but not a lot of cross-country teammates. And so Burry and I really clicked, and he definitely brought me up multiple levels. And during that time, we traveled the world together. We were great friends. He's a lot younger than I was. He was probably 10 years younger than me, but he was really mature, and it's just an amazing friendship. And he was hit and killed training near his home in South Africa in the winter, and it just sucked. After that, for me, everything we had this amazing relationship, and all of these levels, he jumped me up in the World Cup. When he left, those evaporated, and I pretty much stopped racing World Cups the year after he was killed. So it sucked. He had a young wife, and it just horrible. A taxi in South Africa hit him. And then recently we lost Ben Sontag, who he's from Germany. His nickname was the German, and he's just the nicest guy. And he had moved to Durango to go to school. He was a Nordic skier. He started off as a Nordic skier and Nordic or winter triathlon world champion, I believe. He found Durango through the Fort Lewis cycling program, moved out here, and he just really, he loved riding. He was a great member of the community. We did lots of races together, and we spent more time together when I was starting my Leadville, and Epic Rides was kind of developing, and just the nicest, best guy you could ever imagine. And he was riding here in Durango. We have lots of dirt roads. The town has grown, but it's still a pretty remote area here in the southwest Colorado. And he was out on a dirt road, and some kid, high school kid, was speeding, lost control of his truck on this road that maybe has, 5 cars an hour drive down it. And he was just in the completely wrong place at the wrong time and died right there. So it sucks. Everybody has people that they're close with that they lose, and no one likes it. And it's just so unfortunate for us as cyclists to have these senseless things that could be totally avoided. But just we have to appreciate what we have when we have it.
Yeah, absolutely. At a practical level, and I mean, you don't have to answer this if it's just not, a great question for you, but at a practical level, do you still ride on the road or in places where there are cars? I think, I frankly, have become afraid to ride on pavement in particular, just because I know how many devices are competing for drivers' attention, and a bike doesn't seem to be able to compete for attention the way it ought to be able to.
Yeah, that is true. It doesn't seem to be able to compete. I still ride on the road. I'm more aware of things now, but it's one of those things that I really enjoy it. We have great group rides, and I don't know. I think of a guy I think of when these tragedies happen. Two people actually. Gord Fraser is a great road racer. Probably has more domestic wins in the U.S. He's a Canadian, but lived in the U.S. He lives down in Tucson, Arizona, and Tucson has tons of cars. And he has probably ridden more miles on the road and been passed by more cars than anybody I know. And he's fine. He never got hit, or maybe he's gotten buzzed, but it seems like it's such a random thing. But, if you're the one that ends up being affected, obviously it's not random. But for me, I do still ride on the road.
Well, we're sorry about those losses. I know both those men meant a ton to you, and hearing about their tragedies obviously affects the entire cycling community. And we just hope that somehow, some way, we can make ourselves a little more relevant to the drivers out there, that they understand a little bit more about us, about what we're trying to do, about how we're trying to proceed down roads, and we're just trying to share the same space that they're using. So, Todd, thanks for sharing those stories. We appreciate it. And thanks for sharing all your Leadville advice. It was terrific. Great hearing about some of the stories. Like we said, Fatty and I have put you on the Leadville Mountain Biker Pro Racers Mount Rushmore. This is not the entire Mount Rushmore of Leadville, but for the pro racers, we really feel it's Dave Wiens, Todd Wells, Rebecca Rusch. Now, the real Mount Rushmore has 4 presidents. Don't ask me which they are. I can't remember them right now. We need a 4th up there. Do you have a 4th, Todd, that you would like to be up there with you, Dave, and Reba? Who's the 4th? Is it Howard Grotz? He's got 3 in a row. Is it Albin Licata? He's got the record. Is it somebody else?
I know Albin and Howie are both, amazing riders and have had a big Leadville career. That's tough. That's between you guys. Howie, he's from Durango. We were teammates, good friends. So I think he'd do well there. And Albin obviously holds the record and he's probably made Europe aware, at least the pro racers in Europe, aware of Leadville. So he's done a lot, I think, outside the U.S. for the Leadville 100.
Well, Fatty, we'll start a commission. We've got a job to do here.
Yeah. Well, we'll start getting people to start signing forms, whatever it takes. Todd, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Man, you have so many great stories and such great advice for, racers from the front of the field clear to the back. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's an honor. 100-mile mountain bike race is a tough race, and then you throw in the 10,000-foot elevation that it starts at and the almost near 13,000 feet that it climbs up to, and the whole thing is crazy. So I think it's just one more element to an already insane event.
Howdy, I imagine that we made Todd blush by putting him on our Leadville Racers Mount Rushmore, but there's no way that he is not there in this theoretical Mount Rushmore. Colorado guy, 3 wins, handful of other very terrific days, and just someone who's incredibly approachable and smart and willing to share. He's right up there with Wiens and Rusch in my book.
Yeah, and let's be clear, this is a racer's Mount Rushmore we're talking about, a pro racer's Mount Rushmore. I mean, if you look at the history and the heritage of the Leadville Trail 100, if you were going to make this theoretical Mount Rushmore, I think you would start with the Klobers, Merrill Lee. I mean, those type of folks are going to be up there. But if you're just looking at racers, yeah, I agree. Wiens, Reba, Todd Wells, and we just need that fourth. I mean, maybe that fourth is TBD. Like maybe this year we'll figure that out. Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe it's me.
Yeah. I'd like you up there. Absolutely. Well, part of the People's Mount Rushmore, the Leadville People's Mount Rushmore, you're definitely on there. Meantime, if you are in need of a home refi and live in Colorado, Todd is taking calls at Sinberg Capital Lending. Present your Leadville race time and your credit score, and Todd will take care of you. Actually, just kidding about the finish time. Just have your credit score ready.
It probably would be worth having.
Yeah. Hey, I love Todd's answer to the hardtail or full suspension question we laid on. Don't know that he settled the debate, but we got some good insights from Todd there. We do know, Fatty, that Todd is not a single speeder.
Yeah. We should have asked him, though, if it's better to race on a 1x or a 2x in the Leadville Trail 100. While 1x is definitely taking the off-road world by storm for the past few years, there's still a good argument to be made for the front derailleur in long, dirty events like Leadville.
Yeah, I read something from Amanda Nauman that illustrates that. Amanda is both a cyclocross racer and an endurance graveler. She recently finished second at Unbound XL, that's the 350-miler in Kansas, and she's won the 200 twice. She's also a Shimano athlete. And here's what she says. Both the 1x and 2x setups are great for their desired applications. She uses 1x for cyclocross and 2x for longer gravel events. In the shorter races, she says it's better to limit her gear choices and simplify the setup. In the longer events, she appreciates having a better gear range with smaller jumps on the cassette between gears.
Yeah, that makes sense. I currently am riding with a 1x setup, even for longer events. That said, my very fastest time in the Leadville 100 is with a 2x setup, and it was actually the XTR Di2 setup with a single shifter that made all of the front derailleur decisions for me. It was very light that way because of just the one shifter. And it was way smarter than I was about when I would shift from big to small ring. The point is, ride Shimano, and you can have either. Shimano Mountain Bike continues to offer 2x systems at its very highest level, including the 12-speed XTR, which is my drivetrain of choice.
Yeah, they do that because Shimano knows that some riders prefer the tighter jumps between gears. And when you are out on a long day, finding just the right gear can be a difference maker for a good number of riders.
Yeah, or if you're like me, prefer the simplicity of 1x or 1x1. Then you can do that with a Shimano setup too. That is the cool thing about Shimano. You don't have to choose sides, you just choose. Check out the 1x and 2x mountain bike systems at bike.shimano.com. Let's go ahead and wrap this episode. Huge thanks to Leadville legend Todd Wells.
Yep, glad we came to our senses, Fatty, and had Todd come on and tell his stories. If you'd like to jog our memories, reach out on social media. Fatty's on Twitter at Fat Cyclists, and I am on Instagram at Michael Houghton. Of course, we are both on the Facebook Leadville 100 mountain bike participants page.
And if you're interested in having a little bit of a text chat about any topic Leadville related, join our Slack channel. You will find a link to it over at Leadville100podcast.com.
If you're digging the show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating and write a review. To see all the ways you can find this show, it's pod.link/Leadville.
Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in less than a month at the starting line.
On the pavement, Leadville, Colorado. One more time, make some noise for your 2016 champion, Todd Wells.